Audrey. Just mute Audrey, who's her microphone.
Arlingwood, Ashton Heights, Aurora Highlands,
David Littman here.
Dalston, Virginia Square,
Ken Hughes here.
Barcroft,
Cotton Band here.
Bellevue Forest, Bluemont, Boulevard Manor, Buckingham, Cherrydale, Claremont, Clarendon Courthouse, Columbia Forest, Columbia Heights, Dominion Hills, Donaldson Run, Douglas Park,
Here, Steve Jordan Tomaszewski, President, Douglas Park Civic Association.
all right. Arlington,
Ed Hiltz,
Foxcroft Heights, Glen Carlin,
I'm here, but so is Kathy. I don't know.
okay.
Ryan Tomlin and Kathy.
Green Valley, Highland Park, Overly Knoll,
Liz McCready,
Ivy Park, Leeway Overly, Long Branch Creek, Lion Park, Lion Village, Maywood, Old Dominion, Old Glebe, Penrose, Rock Spring,
Yeah, this is Darcy. Yeah, this is Darcy Kaufman. I'm with Penrose.
Jerry Paul, Rock Spring.
Shirlington, Terrell Leeway Heights, Waverly Hills.
Alex Luschnitz right behind you.
All right, thank you. Waycroft Woodlawn, Westover Village,
Here.
Williamsburg, Woodmont, Yorktown.
Does anyone missed? So I can do Carter Eccles.
Okay.
There might be, check, there might be a couple missed on.
Let's see. Did anyone just join us?
Hi, I did.
Okay. Your name? You-
Tabitha Ricketts here for Lion Park.
Anyone else? We have just joined?
Hi, it's Jamie Lockhart with Foxcroft Heights. Sorry, I couldn't hear you well when
Sure.
I heard it called earlier.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So, Steve, if you put back up the agenda. Okay, for those who don't know me, I'm Chief Joker. I'm the Division Chief of Neighborhood Services, and so I'm just filling in until we get our staff fully up to speed. And I'll have a little report after the chair's report. So with that, Kathy, I think we can, or do you usually call for the minutes, which we can't approve, but they've been.
Yes.
Let me just ask if you're not speaking, if you could just go ahead and turn off your mic and I think and also turn off your video unless you're speaking, just to cut down a little bit on the load on the Teams link. Thanks. Just want to welcome everybody who's here remotely or in the room. And I'm pretty sure we don't have a quorum, correct?
We have 9 in the room right now, Kathy.
About to get 10.
Okay.
And
Bill,
Bill,
thank you, Bill.
so 10. And so we probably will not reach a physical quorum. So I just want to say before we move on with the minutes here, we won't vote to approve the minutes because we don't have a physical quorum. But we'll go ahead and accept any corrections to the minutes. So if anybody has had a chance to review them and wants to provide corrections, go ahead and do that right now. And Laura and Chikwe, I think I sent a couple really minor ones in a couple days ago. So
Yeah, I have those.
okay. All right, we'll go ahead and proceed with the officers and staff report. And I just want to mention that we're really appreciative of everybody who did make an effort to come in person. And also those of you who are participating remotely. We know it's July and people have other things going on in their lives at this particular point in time. So I'll talk a little bit more about attendance when we get to the officers report. But Chikwe, and do you want to go ahead with the staff report first?
Sure, I'll just do a brief report and I'll turn it over to Laura to talk a little bit about projects. But on the staffing side, as most of you know, we are, Tim McIntosh moved over to our enemies in DPR, but DPR are our friends. And also Angela Marshall retired. So we've been recruiting for both positions. Angela's position just closed today, so we'll be getting the applications probably next week. And so our goal is to have someone hired in that position by the end of August. And also the supervisor position, Tim's old position, closes next Friday. And so our goal again is to hopefully have both people on board by your next ArNAC meeting in September. So that's kind of our overall goal. So looking forward to it. So that's all I have. Laura, did you have anything you want to add to that in terms of on the project side?
No, I mean, we've had Hannah here now for about 2 months.
I started at the end of May.
Okay, end of May.
It's
So,
flying by.
yeah. So hopefully everyone has been able to chat with her if you've had questions about any landscaping issues on any of the projects. Since she's also doing that.
What's your last name?
Whitmer? Yes.
Ryan Down.
Because I've emailed a few of you already, so I'm sure I'll keep emailing.
So in terms of where we are with projects, we're still working towards having the fall funding round. So that'll be in December. Right now, it looks like we're going to have between 5 and 6 projects that'll go for that will be up for funding and approval by ArNAC. And right now we've got about 10 projects that are in active design and then 4 in construction closeout phase. So, but if anyone has questions on their own particular project or neighborhood, or if you just want to sort of talk through getting projects started, please reach out to me after the meeting or by email or call.
Most of my project been finished since we talked this afternoon.
Let's see, anything else, Laura?
No, that's it. So Bill was just raising a comment about
But what I was saying,
projects.
we have a list of active projects that are working through the, and could y'all email us a copy of that to see where we stand with my project?
We can definitely, yeah, we can do that.
And then it would be also useful to know how much money is not committed in that, and how much, so we can see about how many projects can be funded. Because I don't think we're going to get more money for what, about a year and a half now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's a long period of time. We can do a lot of stuff.
Hopefully, yeah. Yeah, so Steve could give an update. I'm
Normally
sure,
we bring this by the funding session time, we bring it about time. How much is allocated and how much is left over, but if you need before that, we can.
Steve, could I ask you to speak up just a little bit? Thanks.
Yeah, Bill was asking, to know the balance, unallocated amount of money. So want to know how much projects we can, fund. And I was telling him, we normally report by the funding session time that how much balance we have. But if you need that information, before that, we can go back and
To everybody.
yeah, email.
Okay, and I was just going to ask, Laura, do we still post a list of projects, active projects on the website?
the projects that are in active phase should still be on the website.
Yeah.
So people can also go and look at what's going on with an individual project there. I cannot say for sure with the staffing changes whether every project is completely up to date, but actually, Kathy, that's a nice reminder for us to actually check on all of them.
Okay.
And make sure that they are.
Okay, thanks. Anything else, Laura?
Nope, that's all I have.
I have a question. Do we do any like before and after photos? A lot of what we do have visual components to them that are like dramatic changes. And sometimes I know that at least with my project there are before photos. I just didn't know if we have them for all of them. It might be nice if we at some point did like, here's a 10-year look back at the before and afters, so that we could take them to our civic associations and share some of like the successes we've had.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, we have, they have done it. I know when they had, was it the 50th anniversary?
Yeah, I don't know if I can make that up.
Well, no, but I'm saying they did it before.
Yeah.
At the 50th. So if you ever do just want some of the ones that we've done, yeah, we've absolutely done.
What year is this?
This is, so it started in 64, so we're actually almost at 60. Crazy.
We also put them in our annual reports, but it would be good to kind of have a collection, as you mentioned, that kind of shows across neighborhoods.
Well, what is the funding mechanism you're referring to that we might not be able to get funding for another year and a half?
That's the CIP.
That's a bond. So we get bond every 2 years. So we got, a bond last November. So we have to wait 2 years to get it.
So we do have funds. I don't want anybody left with the impression that we don't have funding. We do.
Yeah.
Correct?
We've got $5 million last bond session. So next one is going to be November 24. So and then see how much money we get.
Excuse me. It would be helpful for people who have a horrible case of Alzheimer's.
Whoever's speaking, you guys, could you please speak up because it's hard to hear you.
Okay, for those folks who are not knowledgeable about ArNAC, or people with advanced Alzheimer's like me, if y'all could give us a list of the projects in the priority order and what we need to do. When is it the right time to do the surveys or whatever? What we should be doing as reps. Like I have a project way down the list and probably don't need to do anything with it. But if you have a project that you think is like number 5 on the list, you're going to need to get your petitions done and all that. And so we'll have a little bit of advance notice about what we need to do and when.
Yeah. So, Bill, if you want, why don't you email me and then copy the executive committee? And then we can kind of follow up on some of that because you know, once we're back to being more fully staffed, and there is that calendar that David had created in terms of, you know, sort of check-in points where we would be reporting to you all regularly. And there are different ones we would do quarterly versus half year and an annual. So we could also look at some of that as well. But you guys are always welcome to just email and ask where you guys are on the list, if it's sort of an in-between time, or if you just want to reach out to whoever is your the associate planner for your neighborhood, you can do that as well.
The reason, part of the reason I want to know is, where is my next, not the one we were talking about today, but the one, and when
Bill, I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Please speak up.
Okay. I have an unapproved project on the list. And I use myself as an example of seeing a list and knowing when do I need to go out and get my petitions done and harass. Who should I harass to get pushed up on those?
Why don't you start with me?
For no good reason.
Harass me first.
Okay, and so they would look at, you know, what we have in the pipeline.
Right.
An approximate amount of dollars that we have, and can we, you know, what can we fund? And then most important, we've had a bunch of downtime in all of Arlington County because of COVID.
Right.
We need to get us, I keep wanting to say, just let me say NC just for.
That's fine, that's fine.
Members to go out and look at what they need to do or want to do for new projects, get them on the list and get them to understand what has to happen, and let's get this thing moving. I say this because with this 2-year funding cycle, one, and with the dollars that we have, we probably don't have enough money to do all the things.
We don't.
Okay. And so we don't need to do it today or next month, but shortly, we're going to have to start thinking about how much money we need to keep, for a 2-year budget to keep this whatever we call ourselves, moving along expeditiously.
Right.
Because
And Bill, I'll just add, just let me chime in there. We'll be taking a look at that when we get closer to planning for the next CIP. So you're right, we'll have to certainly consider that and look at what we think we need, so.
yes, ma'am. And what I'm saying is we need to do the grunt work, you know, us peons, so that y'all can have an idea of where to get to, what you really need to ask for, and a rationale for why we should have $100 million over the next 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we just finished having people verify their priority projects, right, Laura?
Yes, we had just requested that everyone send in either new ones or just reconfirm, or you know, let us know the ongoing support for the ones that they currently have in the first priority list.
Okay, I might want to just acknowledge Eileen has her hand up. So maybe before we move on with the agenda, Eileen, do you have a question?
I do. One of the good things about being at home is that I could go look at the website while we were all doing other things. I cannot find the spreadsheet. I can't find it on the ArNAC program page, and I can't find it on the advisory committee page. Now, that doesn't mean it isn't there, but it's certainly buried. It's not where I remember it being. And the spreadsheet that used to be there told us every project, I think, that had been to the county board. So it was, and it was the ones in design, the ones in construction, and then the ones finished construction, but not absolutely completed.
And you're saying it's not on there anymore?
I'm saying I cannot find it. That does not mean that it's absolutely not, but I haven't been able to find it in months.
So
So another piece of information I'll just add. Go ahead, Eileen.
It was Bill's earlier comment about the spreadsheet, and I just wanted to second that. I have no sense anymore of where we are and what things are in progress. So,
Yeah, so
really appreciate that being back on the website. Thank you.
So normally we also would have gone over all of this at our spring funding round, but as I think you all know, we held off on the spring funding round due to the situation we have with staff turnover and things. So it is, we'll make an effort to make sure that everybody is in the loop on what's going on in light of the fact that we haven't done it the normal way this year.
You just reminded me that I didn't renew my neighborhood project as the #1 project.
And then
And do I send that to you? Thank you.
I'll just add, Laura, if you can also post the preliminary project list on the website as well, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I'll look and see where that's normally been kept, and I'll we'll either make a new link to make it a little bit easier for people to find, or I'll make sure it's posted.
And can I eloquently lather on some more?
If it just takes 2 minutes, though.
Yeah, we need to move on with the agenda. We need to move on.
Okay, folks in my civic association and people I talk to have no idea what this organization is all about. Even, ArNAC, they don't know. They don't even know NC anymore. And so what we need to do is to get these basic things out to the members so that the members can get out to their civic associations and get them interested in our organization again. And it's never too soon to get a bunch of people organized and happy and ready to go, because funding comes faster than lightning. We never have enough time.
Okay, thank you, Bill. And we'll certainly get that information that we just discussed out there posted for folks, and we'll be focusing on the process of budgeting and as we progress through the year. So thanks for bringing those points up. I appreciate it. I want to move ahead with the officers report, and I just want to make a couple of quick comments about I sent out the attendance reminders. It occurred to me that probably have some people new to the committee who may not remember all the history of what we used to do when we had in-person meetings and how we moved to the electronic meetings policy. So I sent it out again, would like you guys to read through that. I'm not going to go through it now. And if you have questions on that, would ask that you please email those to me. We won't be meeting in August, but in September, I'd like to just hit the highlights of the attendance requirements and make sure we answer any questions that people have. And then let's see, David, I think you want to make a few comments about the project selection process and some feedback on the survey.
Yeah, I'm going to be really brief. I just want to piggyback on something though Laura said on the calendar. We initially had planned to start doing the status reports that we all agreed to on the calendar the start of the fiscal year, which would have been this month. But because of the staff shortages on the AMP staff, that we probably won't start doing that till September, October when they're fully staffed. But we will, the calendar calls for reporting of projects on the not yet approved and also projects in process. And so, we're well aware of the need to do that. And hopefully we'll get back to doing that come September, October. At the last meeting, I mentioned I was going to compile the survey results on project selection, which I've done. There's a lot of variety in the comments we received. I'm not going to go over the details because I think we need to have a bigger discussion of that at our next meeting in September. The one thing I will mention is that there was a surprising amount of synchronicity and overlap between project selection process and expanding project types, that people were making the same kind of comments on project selection that they made on expanding project types. So there may be some opportunities there for us to build a project selection process that jives with the expanding project types. And hopefully we'll have something to present to you in September. That was it, Kathy.
Okay, thanks, David. Is John there? John Kirkpatrick?
Yes, no comments, Kathy.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and deal with our presentation for tonight. We're really happy to welcome Elizabeth Hardy, who is the principal planner and Arlington County demographer. And she and Emily Garrett are the ones who have put together the beta version of the demographic dashboard. I've mentioned it in a few of our meetings. And as a nice tool for having information about our neighborhoods done at a lower level than we've been used to in the past. So just want to welcome Elizabeth and thank her for doing this presentation. She's going to present for, I think, about 15-20 minutes and then take questions.
Great, thank you so much, Kathy, and thank you for inviting me here. If I start to trail off and you can't hear me, please just shout. Let me know. It's really a pleasure to be here tonight. It's nice to be in person with folks. As Kathy said, I'm going to talk about our population demographic estimates tool that provides demographics at a sub-county level and in particular at the civic association boundary. You all know about Arlington County demographics, and I hope everyone has heard of the profile document, which comes out every year. It's been coming out since 1982 in different forms, and so we have a lot of years of data. So we have the demographics of at the county level, and then we also have started putting them out at the planning corridor level. And we've always put out our own CPHD population estimates in terms of units, households, and population. And then we turn to the U.S. Census Bureau data to look at those other fun characteristics, socioeconomic characteristics of our population. But, you know, we're really limited by geography and timeliness. So census data is great, but we're limited by the boundaries of the Census Bureau. So we have census tracts, block groups, blocks. That's a little map taken from one of our other applications that aligns or overlays civic associations to census tracts. And really, you cannot nest the census geographies into the civic association boundaries. So that's one issue. And then really any other boundary that we want to use in the county. So the other issue is timeliness. 2020 census, we have just gotten some of the 2020 census results back as of May, and the rest of them are not going to be available until 2024. So, you know, we're thinking about 2020 census and usefulness, and are we even going to use this data? So that all plays in our minds of because we don't have all the information back. There's another survey that is the American Community Survey that comes out every year. I'll refer that to that as the ACS. And the most recent is at 2021. So we have a 2-year lag if you're thinking of data. Those are 5-year estimates. It's great data, but it comes to a sample of the population. So there are some margins of error that we have to be careful about. And another one that we use is Population Estimates Program. The most recent is 2022, and that just came out. So, you know, we want something that can fit more of our needs, fit our geographies, fit, you know, recent, current periods of time. So what we did was we combined the U.S. Census Bureau ACS estimates with our internal data, which is the Master Housing Unit database. I'll talk more about that, as a way to provide these demographic profiles for civic associations and really other custom geographies. Right now we have this out as a beta version because this is the first time we're doing this. We wanted everyone to take a look at it, test it out. Does it make sense for your neighborhood? What questions do you have? What else would you like to see? Let us know. So I know Kathy's already sent us a whole list of stuff that she would like. So we'll work on getting that implemented into the next round of this tool. I just want to talk about our master housing unit database. This data is all available online. We started putting this together in 2015, around the time when the community facility study started. Really, we found that we needed to have one place, one file with every single housing unit in the county, because it didn't exist. There was data here, there was data over there, apartment data, there was real estate data, there, and we're like, what is happening here? We need to put all this in one place, track it over time. So that's what we started doing in 2015. So we also have variables that we included with this: unit type, unit count, the number of committed affordable units, the year that the project was built or the housing was built. We have an affordability index, and then we also calculate tenure, owner, renter, occupied. So we have that data. It's available online. I'll put the link up here and I'll share this presentation with everyone. You can check it out. So traditionally, how do we do our just basic housing unit households population counts? What we do is we take the housing units and very simply we apply occupancy rates to the housing unit, because an occupied housing unit is considered a household. And then we apply an average household size to turn that household into an estimated number of people. So that's the basics. It's a little more complicated than that. We add different factors based on unit type and geography, but essentially that's what we do. But how we changed this up is we started using the master housing unit database instead of the census base, because we found that the master housing unit database actually has better data than the Census Bureau. So we started using that, and we applied these census occupancy rates to the data that we have for the housing. Same methods to get households and population. But what we also did was, once we got the household, we added characteristics from ACS on households, like size, number of people, income. We added that to each household. We did the same to population. And what we did was, after we applied all of that data to each housing unit, each node in our database, allowed us to take a bunch of them and summarize them into different geographies, and then came up with these different demographic estimates for each of the areas. So,
excuse me, what is ACS again?
American Community Survey, is that the Bureau? So did I totally confuse everyone? Or we, okay. So basically you have a housing unit. We have the housing unit data. We apply demographics, characteristics, and shares that we get from the American Community Survey to each of those housing units. At that housing unit level, it makes no sense whatsoever, because you have, like, one person household with, 0.5. It just doesn't make sense at that one housing unit. But when you start building them up for larger geographies, you start to see the pictures. And then when we tested it against known numbers and known from the census and track level data, it came out pretty close to it. So we were very happy with the results. So these are the statistics that we put out. So for population, we have total population, race, ethnicity, age, persons below poverty, a bachelor's degree or higher. For households, we're looking at household type, so family or non-family, persons and households, average household size, average household income, percent of households by income. In terms of housing, looking at owner versus renter occupancy, and then the cost as percent of income for both owner and renter occupied units. And then we also look at employment, civilian labor force participation rate, unemployment rate, means of transportation to work, and place of work. And I'm going to show you how to get to this data and how to use it, and then I will take questions. So if I switch over to Arlington County website, this is just the website here, and I'm going to type in demographics. And first, we click on the first link. This is our main demographics section here. So you can get to the profile, other statistics, or other demographic dashboards. But the third one listed here is the one that I'm talking about tonight. So I'm going to click on that page. And you can open the dashboard by clicking on this image here. But I'm going to show you a couple other things on the page. So you can access the dashboard here. One thing to note, that we didn't include a map in the dashboard because it was just too much for us right now. So we have the data there. So if you need to know where your civic association is or the boundaries, we did include links to maps where you can look that up. So that's here. You can download the data in Excel, and I'll show you how to do that as well. Just a little blurb about method, reliability, and sources. So let me open up the dashboard. It takes a minute or two to load because there's a going on. Okay, and what you can do, so it's set to be the county level right now, and these are our January 23 estimates. So we're getting that current year estimate. And because we're using our current housing supply, we're not using that census base. That's how we can get that current year. Does someone have a civic association they would like me to plug? Barcroft. Okay, let's go to Barcroft. So you just have to scroll down, pick the one you want, and everything will update with information. You can see what percent of the population is in Barcroft, almost 2%. See the distribution, race, ethnicity, age. So that's pretty much it. That's how the dashboard functions. It's not that technically savvy on this end, but there's a lot on the back end. You can see with the labor forces, unemployment rate, and how it really compares to that county overall. You have rented versus owned. Yes. Down in there as well, which is the owner occupied or? Yeah. Yes. So owner occupied is 43%. Renter occupied is 57%. Anyone want to look at a different civic association? Then I'll show you how to download.
Let's try Columbia Heights.
Columbia Heights, okay. Start to see as things update, they change, right? So look at the owner versus renter, how that changed. 78% are renter occupied units. A lot, 25 to 44. Employment rate went down. Bachelor's degree or higher is almost at 80%. So this is a way to just look at your data and have it already put out in charts and graphs for you. An easy way, you can take a screenshot. There are limitations with Power BI. Doesn't allow you to download the data. That's why we made it available on that previous page, but you can look at how civic associations compare with that data download. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions, or if we want to go people online first. How do you normally?
Looks like we have a question. Yeah, can you guys see all that? The questions? Okay, let's see. I think Ed Hills had his hand up first, I think, and then we had David Littman and then Tabitha.
Yes, thank you. This is Ed Hills from Fairlington. Can you show us with ArNAC's emphasis on including or considering diversity in our projects? Is there information that you can provide us that's readily understandable that says what the diversity is in our respective civic associations?
So in diversity, are you talking about race, ethnicity?
Well, whatever ArNAC is using to define that.
And let me just interject here quickly, Elizabeth. We had certain factors that we're looking at that came out of the neighborhood conservation program review. And those are the ones that I sent you in the email saying, can you add this information? So what you have on that chart that you showed is a whole lot of other stuff too. And it's missing, I think, a couple of things that we want to look at. But Ed, I don't know if that helps you, but the specific factors that we were looking at. Not all of them are on that chart yet, but they are definitely in their database.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe I'm a lone ranger in this, but I find it very confusing as to how a neighborhood or a civic association should determine what their diversity is and how they factor that in submitting projects, and how ArNAC considers which ones to support or are diverse enough, are not diverse enough, or too diverse. It's just kind of confusing. Any significant clarification could be appreciated.
So I can,
And
oh, go ahead, Kathy. I was gonna add it.
I was just going to say, I don't know if Elizabeth can necessarily answer that on behalf, because ArNAC has chosen to look at some specific. But Ed, I'll be happy to send out again the factors that we are looking at that came out of the program review, that we're saying, okay, these are the things that we want to understand in neighborhoods and how they are relate to looking at the county as a whole, but looking at these neighborhoods, how they differ from that. So I can send that out again if you think that would help.
Well, yeah, that would be appreciated to send it out to everybody, but
Sure.
that tells you what criteria ArNAC is using, but where does the neighborhood get that information?
We get the information from this particular database, and we were using a different version of the demographic dashboard earlier that has some real limitations with census tracts. So this is enables us to go down at a much lower level of detail, and so it's a little bit more accurate representation of what the demographics for a particular civic association look like. So you can pull up that chart for your civic association, you can look at that. But as to the specific factors that ArNAC is looking at, that's something I'll send out again.
Okay. Well, my last question is, then these projects that are coming up for the next funding round, will all of these have a diversity element to them, or they'll determine how they fare among the different projects being considered?
Yeah, what we did in an earlier meeting, if you can recall, Ed, we have a form that we want you to fill out for your civic association that you provide for either existing projects or any new projects that you submit. And that's an assessment of the equity factors. And we just want you to submit that. And we haven't yet finalized exactly how we're going to count that towards a project approval. That's part of what we're still working on, but there is that assessment sheet that we went over in an earlier meeting. Does that ring a bell?
Not to me, but that doesn't mean that others don't have a better recollection than I do. But thank you for taking the time to answer my questions.
Okay, I'll send that sheet out again to everyone. Let's see, I think David, you were next.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. Elizabeth, a lot of Arlington senior programs are based on 55 plus as the age point. And I'm wondering if you can cut the data that way using 55 plus instead of 65 plus, because I think that would be useful for a lot of civic associations and also the senior programs in understanding what that demographic is.
Yes, that's very helpful, and we can definitely do that.
Great, thanks. That was all I had.
Thank you.
I'll just make a quick mention here, Elizabeth, that I looked at the data on the spreadsheet. It's way down. There's a lot of detail on age groupings, right? So there's you can cut it at a lot of different ways for ages. So just a comment.
So I think Kathy Tabitha has her hand up.
Yeah.
I do, and I was so invested in the other folks' answers that I forgot my question. So I will retract that and come back later.
If you think of it, ask it again.
Will do. Thanks.
So we'll move to in the room, and I know John had a question.
I was just wondering if the
Okay.
county is looking at its own criteria for diversity and equity projects, if that has come up, so there could be something common across the county.
From staff for the program, or are you talking about the county generally?
As a whole.
Oh, I don't know.
Yes, I mean, Samia and I have talked about doing that. We're in the process of the early stages of trying to get data together. Staffing constraints have limited us right now. We're hoping to get those conversations back up. And it's, yes, it's always a topic, and we're always trying to come up with another, what can we put out that everyone can use to help answer these questions that you all are asking. So I don't know when that will be, but I am in conversations with Samia Bird on that. Yeah.
Thanks.
And it looks like Tabitha might have remembered her question.
I did. Thank you. So I'm wondering if there is somewhere we can get kind of better definitions about some of the statistics that are in here. So I'm looking specifically at the housing costs as percent of income and wondering, is that gross income? Is that net income? Just a little better understanding of how some of these values were reached.
Sure, that's a great point. It might be worth just putting a link to the census glossary for some of these terms and variables for more information. So I can definitely add that to the page.
Thank you.
Sarah?
I've been involved in a number of school planning projects, and I know that the school system actually fired several demographers because the school numbers on school population were always wildly wrong, always. And this is why we've had this crisis over schools. And I know that when they divided up the kids, and Patrick Henry, remember? Okay, and it's like they were looking at census tracts almost each block. And the way that they divided it up the neighborhood was almost mystical. Okay, it's like you could have kids on either side of the street that would be split into two different school districts that they had not been the previous year. It was very painful for the families and very painful for the children who had been promised that they would go to one school and then they were ripped off and gone to another school. And so now we have the pandemic, and I have been told that a lot of parents, particularly minority parents, took their kids out of school, and that there are kids out there who are now working. They never went back to the schools, and that the school population is now down. So I think we have a crisis on our hands, don't we?
Well, I mean, I can't speak for schools because I'm on the county side, but I do know schools has their own boundaries that they use. They're planning units. They're very small. And I know I have heard of issues about, kids being separated just based on where they draw them. I don't have experience on that side with APS, so I can't speak to that, but I can try and get clarifications for more on that. After the pandemic, we have had a population decline in the county. We have had a lot of people move.
But is that across the board, or are we seeing that only in the schools with the school age children?
It's across the board. We're seeing that Arlington's population in the population estimates, has declined across the board, across different age groups. If we look at 2020 through 2022 estimates, the under 5 age group has declined by 9%.
That's significant.
It is significant. There is birth rates are declining. People are having less kids. We need, migration is a big impact, has big impact on the number of kids. So it's a national trend. We are impacted by that national trend. The only age group that we see that increases are those age 65 and above.
Is that like an age in place phenomenon?
It's probably a mixture of both. Aging in place, so more there's just the baby boomers is just a large population, and as they age, that 65 plus grows as well. And then some folks move in as well. There's a lot going on. Migration is always very hard to get a handle on.
When I saw your chart and I saw the population, I was like, oh, I wonder if it's live. And, you know, do we have like a feed into the local
I wish.
maternity ward? It's like, one more.
No, and yeah, births have gone down. I mean, since 2010, community facilities, and when we had the recession, a lot of people stayed in this area because this is where the jobs were, and they had kids here. They were invested, and then when the rest of the country started to stabilize and get better, people found jobs, other places to live where it might be cheaper to live, and we had people move out. From the pandemic, people who can telework and have the luxury to telework were the ones that really moved out of this area. And, because we had policies on migration and things were cut, we didn't have that backfill coming into the county. So those are the things that I know the trends, but it is a nationwide trend that births are going down. If you just Google it and search for news articles, there will be several that come up.
Is there vacancy rates in the data?
In this data?
Yeah.
In the back end of the data, yes, that we.
No, in the front end, yeah. Because vacancy rates are like, as far as, I mean, it's anecdotal to this, but like, it's a speaking data point.
Yeah, so vacancy rates are built into our calculations on how we get households. Because a vacant housing unit is not a household. So the flip of a vacancy rate is an occupancy rate. So we use.
How about commercial though?
Commercial is not, well, commercial is in for the employment, yes. Commercial rates are on the employment numbers, but this is, sorry, my employment's confused. This is our labor force here. So in terms of our number of jobs in the county, those estimates were found in the profile. Vacancy rates are included in those. Yeah, they just confused.
Okay.
Make it up. Try to take a couple more questions. There are any in the room there?
Bill has a question here.
Please. Some percentage of civic associations are not in our organization. And generally they have no interest whatsoever. The lack of interest is generally they don't have a civic association group, and there's no way of drilling down to the citizens and say, hey, I know you have been complaining bitterly, Ms. Smith, about needing a sidewalk to XYZ, but Ms. Smith gets stopped and is unable to work up the system to figure out how to make that happen. Is there a way that we could use these data to go to the civic association? And in many cases, we don't have civic associations. Or, I don't know, communicate with these people somehow to say, hey, folks, if you want something like a book box, you gotta get organized, come into NC, ArNAC, and be a collective organization. Would you be a tool to market us to citizens who are not organized into civic associations or are organized into civic associations, but through turnover, they don't know the benefit of this organization?
So, Bill, this is Kathy. I just want to respond to your, from the ArNAC point of view, what we'd like to do is take this information that's available now at a civic association level and use it as a communication tool back to civic associations. If we have groups who are not participating, we don't have a participating civic association, we'll have to address that problem kind of separately. But I think it's not necessarily up to demographics folks to be sending information out. That's our job as reps to take it back to our civic associations.
No, ma'am, I'm not saying, I'm not trying to get you off the hook, but I'm saying
Bill, I get what you're saying, 'cause just
I'm
like we did
saying,
with the
but
census 2020, right?
You could
participated in
be
that.
a tremendous resource for us to drill more accurately.
Right, because you were
Yes.
helping with the 2020 census, I remember that. And so we use demographics to target populations and do outreach. I remember you were in 2020 census stuff as well, right, Sarah? Maybe?
Not much.
Not much, okay, so, but you're on the right track, yeah. So if you see, you know, people that, you know, or families or renters, you know, how do you target renters, you know? Yes.
Exactly.
Are there any other questions in the room or people who are online?
No
Okay,
one
just,
has
I think, no one has their hand up? Okay.
No.
Just want to thank Elizabeth very much for taking the time to come and present this information to us, and also for responding to me with my many questions and suggestions. I appreciate that. And we'll circle back and try to address, you know, the question that Ed raised. You know, it's clear that it's not clear in terms of how we're using this for ArNAC, in terms of the diversity factors and equity factors. So I'll try to get that cleared up as well. But this, I view this beta version of the demographic dashboard as being how we're trying to use the demographic data and more reliable at the civic association level. So we really appreciate the efforts to get that into shape for us.
Thank you very much.
So thank you, Elizabeth. This is.
And I'll just encourage, and I would encourage all of you to go to that demographic dashboard, look at your civic association and see what you see, because I found it very interesting to look at it for hours. In some cases, I thought, well, I'm not sure that's really an accurate representation, but when I looked further into it, I thought, yeah, it is. And it's definitely better data than what we were using before, that was at the census tract level, where we had to make a lot of assumptions about taking that down to the civic association. So anyway, I think you'll find it interesting, and I would encourage you to share it with your civic associations as well. Okay, I think our next item that we're going to talk about is expanding project types. And just before we get started on that, I just want to mention that we were hoping tonight that this would be an action item we could vote on, and the vote we would be taking, I'll explain in a minute, would be to pass this to the ANP staff to take a look at. So I just want to say at the outset here, we'll go through the presentation. We won't be voting on anything, but my intention would still be to take this information or to pass this to the staff to evaluate, and we'll just take some additional inputs until we can get together and have a quorum to vote on it. But we're not going to stop the process of considering it. So let's see, I think, were you guys going to put the presentation up for me? Sure.
See if we have a quorum now.
Oh, do we have a quorum now?
We only have 12.
16. Each 16, we got 12. Count 12, something maybe
The staff people don't count.
What?
The staff people don't count.
We know it's 12 there. I came back.
Okay, thank you for coming, Bernie.
Yes, Bernie, thanks. Okay, let's see if you can share that presentation. We'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so what we're taking a look are the expanded project types we wanted to consider. And again, this is a response to the Neighborhood Conservation Program Review. And our focus here is really to give our suggestions on expanded project types to the ANP staff to let them review and come back to us with feasibility and other information about whether or not we could consider those as new project types. So can you go to the next slide? I want to collected the input that we're taking a look at tonight, and just as a reminder to everybody, because this has been underway for a while. So prior to this year, 2023, we've had presentations previously on placemaking. We had one back in 2019. We had a presentation from Jill Utan talking about different ways to think about ANP project types that we might be involved in. In our January meeting this year, we had a presentation and a working session where we brainstormed expanding project types. Back up, please. And then there was a community online feedback form. You guys will probably remember that, that was out available to the community to respond. And we had about over 200 people participating in that feedback process. And then in April, we also had a feedback session at Lubber Run, where we had a lot of county folks present to answer questions. We had electronic ways of providing input. We had people could put sticky notes on, they could ask questions. It was really a great session, and we had 37 external attendees, meaning external to staff who were present, who participated in that. And then the staff did an analysis of the feedback form and the in-person event. So Rachel LaPiana, you can probably remember her being involved in this, took all of that information we collected through the community online feedback form and the in-person feedback. And that's what we took a look at our June meeting. And that information that we looked at represented 39 neighborhoods in Arlington, so it's a pretty good cross section. And we held a working session last month where we went through all of the different inputs and we reviewed those and we entertained questions and we took your feedback and recorded that on that consolidated draft list of ideas. And then after last month's meeting, the executive committee, along with Laura and Chickway, the executive committee first reviewed all of that information that we collected. And so that was all the stuff that was on the form we reviewed, plus all of your comments, plus all the notes that we took from the meeting, and we put all that in one document. And then John and David and I met to go through that, and we collected our inputs as well. So now we have to present to you what our recommendations are as an executive committee for new project types that we want to give to the ANP staff to review and come back to us with kind of feasibility questions, et cetera, so we can narrow down really what we want to consider as new project types. And I want to make this comment here because this was, I think, Chickway and Laura made this comment when we met in preparation for this meeting, is that we have a pretty detailed spreadsheet document that has all of the input I described above. That's not going to go away. They're going to share that with other county departments, many of whom are interested in the data we've collected, and we'll have that as a reference point. So even if you don't see something today that reflects every bit of input from that spreadsheet and those other sessions, it doesn't mean that that information isn't going to be shared or be available. But what we're going to talk about tonight is we're narrowing it down to the project types that the executive committee is recommending, and then we'll deal with your questions tonight. So next chart. Okay, so this is what John and David and I did when we met. We took the updated June list and we added all the input from your comments, and then we met to look at all that consolidated input to come up with a recommendation on the new project types. We narrowed the list down to exclude things that we thought were already existing ANP project types. And we also excluded things that we thought were too broad in focus for ANP or that didn't focus primarily on public spaces. And then we consolidated those remaining suggestions into 17 new project types for consideration. And we also included some notes on what we think we'd like to include as policy and process recommendations. So we're going to go through the 17 project types, and then we'll certainly take questions when we've gone through those. So next slide. Okay, the first category, and this comes from the spreadsheet that we all looked at in June. The first category is cleanup and beautification. And so the new project types that we are recommending be analyzed, reviewed by the ANP staff. We'd like to have a project type that we call neighborhood-oriented or neighborhood organized cleanup projects, and that would include invasive plant removal. And so the information about that project type would be, this would be public property, service roads, any neighborhood location that is public or community property. And the kind of support we would want ANP to provide would be supplies, organizing trash pickup, water for participants, that kind of thing. And we view this as being probably a small project size. And the other category that we view as a new project type would be sidewalk repairs. And this would be requesting repairs of damaged sections. And again, this is under the assumption that there's not already another county department that offers the service. And this would also be an improvement of pedestrian safeway as we fix up kind of barriers created by cracks and shifting and stuff in sidewalk sections. There's already a process for submitting problem reports on cutting back overgrown trees and shrubs. So we did not include that in this project type. And what we would look to ANP to provide would be coordination with the appropriate county departments, and we would consider this a small project as well. Okay, the next slide. Okay, in the area of art, which was another category in all the information we collected, a new project type would be temporary or small scale art in public spaces or on public structures. And we would want to avoid overlap with existing public art programs. And this would be things like sidewalks, intersections, crosswalks. You can read the list of things there. And you could consider having these produced by local or neighborhood artists, residents, students. And we would look to ANP to provide coordination with appropriate county departments and supplies. And we view this again as a small project size. Then the other one we thought we want to bring forward and have evaluated would be neighborhood music or cultural events. And we would be looking at these as single occasion events. It could include local talent, for example, neighborhood talent, ability levels of all types. And we'd be looking again for coordination with other county departments, and the kinds of things that maybe could be provided would be, say, sound equipment, a temporary stage, tables and chairs, that kind of thing. But we would want to stay away of funding for food because I think some concerns about health department regulations. And a question that came up is, gee, how would the county store and keep track of that equipment? But that would be something, again, we would ask the ANP staff to come back to us with their ideas. And we could view these as being small, maybe verging on medium-sized projects. Okay, next chart. On this one, we combined suggestions for environmental impact with suggestions for plants and trees because there was a lot of overlap. So several new project types we'd like to think about would be pollinator gardens, rain barrels. You can see the different things here, native grass, native plants, planter boxes. These would be standalone efforts. So it's something that we're not doing as part of a larger ANP project, because we do some of this already as part of other projects, primarily on public property. And say there might be a project to replace existing non-natives with native grass and plants. And the neighborhood would assume maintenance responsibility after a certain point. And we'd be looking for support, again, the coordination from the ANP staff. We would want plant recommendations, the plants themselves, perhaps some assistance with planning and installation efforts, and watering for a specified time period, and view these as ranging from small to medium project sizes. And similar with improving the tree canopy, this would be focused on planting native trees primarily on public property. And we would want to coordinate with existing county programs. We know like Eco Action focuses more on private property plantings, but we would want to coordinate with any existing county programs where there would be overlap. And again, the neighborhood would assume maintenance responsibility after a certain point. So same kind of support we need, coordination, recommendations on trees, the trees themselves, perhaps assistance with planting and watering, and small to medium. And this could be, it doesn't have to be a large scale project. So think of it if you just had a public place where you wanted to plant 3 trees, that could maybe be a small project, that kind of thing. The next project type, streetlight enhancements to reduce light pollution. This was a pretty big area, and some of it was just too broad in scope, but some suggestions we thought that could maybe be smaller scale projects would be putting shields on streetlights. Again, this would be to control light pollution, painting the sides, and I'm assuming there's a way to do that. I don't know exactly what was meant by that suggestion, but we would want the staff to look into that, help us coordinate, because it would not be just with the county, but probably also with Dominion and other utilities who have equipment on those poles. And then installation of equipment and painting. We view these maybe could be smaller, medium-sized projects as well. The next one, community gardens. We have those in Arlington already in a number of locations, but that was one that got a lot of interest in our various ways of collecting the input. So we'd want to take a look at that and see if there might be a way that that could happen in different locations than where they currently exist. So again, coordination. We need help with design and construction, materials, and the neighborhood at some point would assume responsibility for those as well. And then the water access would be something we'd need feedback from the staff on. And this, reviewing these again as small scale projects. And wanted to make a point here. We talked about the fact that we really feel like in the AMP program, we would like to have some policies that say we plant appropriate native plants and grasses in all of our AMP projects, not just the new project types we're considering here, but something we'd like to have as a policy for all the work that we do, that we are working with native plantings. Okay, next slide. On the stormwater front, and again, this could probably have been included with the environmental considerations, but wanted to talk about this separately. Another project type could be converting impermeable surfaces to permeable. There was a lot of interest in this in all of the community forum, the online survey, the comments you guys made. This would be standalone, so not part of a larger ANP park or street improvement project, although that could be considered there as well. But it would be focused on efforts on public property like community areas, sidewalks, street, alleys, road shoulders. And we need coordination here, obviously, design and construction work. This is not something people could do on their own. And this would probably end up being a large project size because this is a pretty major and expensive endeavor. And erosion control, again, we a standalone point of view, we can deal with erosion control, say with a parks project or other larger AMP project. But again, if there's an area of erosion that we want to address, that could be a standalone project on public property. Looking at the coordination again, design and construction work, probably ranging from medium to large. And a policy statement that we'd like to consider too is that maybe all new ANP projects need to be addressing installation of permeable surfaces. And we should be evaluating erosion control in all of our new ANP projects as a way to address the stormwater, what I'll call the crisis right now. Okay, next slide. Road safety, some area that got a lot of mention and interest, although some disagreements on how you do it, but traffic calming and reduction on neighborhood streets. Okay, so we have those efforts on arterial streets, which are not part of the purview of AMP, but on neighborhood streets, are there ways we could consider that? And our understanding is that the county is now considering traffic calming measures where there was kind of a moratorium on that for a period of time. So this again would be standalone, so not part of a larger AMP project. And it would also improve pedestrian safety. It would be a major focus too. And we'd be looking for coordination, also design and construction work. And we'd say medium or large scale is what we would envision here. Okay, the next slide. Public spaces. There was a lot of discussion about this in all the forums where we collected information. So this would be marking, restoring, protecting, maintaining any significant neighborhood location. So it could be historic, cultural, something to do with plants and trees, like a tour, a gateway, maybe something combined with the neighborhood signs. It could be landmarks, signage, tours, et cetera, kind of a broad scope of public spaces. And again, we'll be looking for coordination, design and construction. And at some point, the neighborhood would assume responsibility for keeping that going. And we view these as probably small to medium in size. Okay, the next slide. Small structures. This was an interesting one that got a lot of discussion as well. So we kind of grouped a lot of these suggestions into a project type we're calling constructing and maintaining small structures to address neighborhood interests. So you can see some of the small structures that were suggested here. Those are the kinds of things we'd be considering in this project type. And we would want to, again, coordinate with the right departments. We might need some design and construction work, depends on the size of the project, and the neighborhood would assume responsibility for these as well. And the project size here would be small. Okay, next slide. The home improvement category, a lot of these dealt with ways to look at improvements inside individual homes. And for that reason, we thought It's better suited really for county programs other than A&P, where we're trying to address sort of a community interest and community benefit. It's not to say that these were not very worthwhile suggestions. And again, they're on that spreadsheet. This input will be shared with other county departments, but we just didn't feel like this was a focus for A&P. Okay, the next slide. Pedestrian and bicyclist amenities. So, you know what? This is not the right thing here. We wanted to look here. This is my fault. I pasted the wrong thing into the revised presentation. Sorry about this. What we'd be looking at here is things like bike racks in the neighborhoods, and we could put those near sidewalks or other areas, and this would be something where it would improve bicyclist amenities. And we also wanted to consider bike lanes on neighborhood streets. And I apologize, I just have the wrong part of the spreadsheet pasted in here. And again, we do these as being medium to large. And the next one, neighborhood resource information and communications. This is really a new area for us, and one where we have strong interest being expressed in from all the different sources of input. So we group these all into technology and communication assistance within and across civic associations. And the kinds of things we've included in this project type are the websites, meetings, flyers. You can read the list here, where we would want to be tried to be improving communication with residents in our civic association and probably sharing information across civic associations, like on best practices and things like that. We'd also would want to take a look at collaborating with businesses and nonprofit organizations. And coordination again with other county departments, would need technology, software and hardware assistance, and probably links maybe on county websites to let residents utilize this. But this would be small to medium in scope. And those are all the project types. I apologize again for the wrong information on the bicyclist and pedestrian amenities. But next slide. We have a process recommendation as well. And this came up, I think, Alex, maybe you'll remember our conversation at the Lubber Run event. And there was other interest or similar interest expressed from others that we'd like to establish a small project budget for each civic association. And the idea would be that a civic association can request funds for pre-approved project types without going through a lengthy and elaborate consideration project where you're competing with other neighborhoods and waiting until you progress through the queue. We'd like to have this be more, there's a certain amount of money for a civic association for small projects, and you request those. The approval would be fairly rapid, and we'd really like to try to pilot that process as soon as possible. And this kind of leads us into a remark David made where we start to have some overlap with project selection. We're really seeing us trending toward maybe having a different process for small projects, maybe a different one for medium than we do for large projects. So we're sort of seeing us moving in that direction. And I think that's all the slides I have. I'll be happy to answer questions. And David and John, you guys can feel free to chime in as well. And Chickway and Laura as well, because they've seen the presentation too. Okay, Ed, you had a question?
Yes, it has to do with the traffic calming component on one of the slides that you had. How does this compare to what Neighborhood Complete Streets is trying to do? I'm just trying to understand how the path that ArNAC is going down for traffic calming versus Neighborhood Complete Streets.
Ed, I would respond to that this way, and if the county folks want to chime in, they certainly can. What we'd be asking A&P staff to do is to take this suggestion and go back and look at that, you know, that very kind of question that you've just raised. It's like, okay, is there somebody else already doing this? Is there a better program for this? Is it feasible for A&P to do that? I don't know if we have the answers yet tonight, but Chickway and Laura, do you have anything to add there?
Yes, Scott, this is Chickway. So I would agree. That's part of the exercise is we would go back and talk with Neighborhood Complete Streets and talk with our colleagues in DES and kind of see where it may fit or not fit, or they may say this is out of our scope, but it's something that we would support you guys in. So that's part of the reason why we wanted to. We're glad that you guys did this exercise because it's going to help us have those conversations with our colleagues.
And I'll also add, through making all these changes that we're looking at after we had the program review, one of the recommendations is to look at how we either collaborate with or work differently from Neighborhood Complete Streets, and now with Vision Zero. Those are ones that we're going to be looking at more as well. But I would also just add, in terms of how projects get done, just as a reminder to everyone, when there's a project that a neighborhood is interested in and it comes through our program, it's a bottoms up approach. And so the timing for it getting done is different than if you go through, say, Neighborhood Complete Streets, because they do ranking with a whole different set of criteria and demographics. So, something may get done more quickly in one program than another. Different ways of prioritizing things. So it's something that we're still grappling with ourselves, trying to figure it out. But yeah.
Okay, thanks, Laura. Let's see. It looks like there's a hand up in the room.
Yeah, we've got several people. I think Steve was first.
Hey, this is Steve from Douglas Park. So I have some major concerns about these new potential project types. The way that I'm seeing this is that it's just a whole lot of distractions for the staff that are working on this. I have a lot of concerns that the current projects that are in the queue are not being handled in a timely manner, and putting more stuff on the staff's plate, which we've also heard from today, short staff, lots of turnover, that's a major concern, that if we do push this over to them to do a feasibility assessment or do anything more, that it's really just going to be a big distraction and make all of our current projects in the queue get done a lot slower. So I think that something like this, maybe we should postpone this a year or two, especially if we couldn't even get our story together for the last funding round here. December really isn't that far away. Especially when we're trying to prioritize things that certain neighborhoods have been working on for years to get done. I know our neighborhood has been trying to get a simple project done for over 6 years, and it's still not even past the concept design phase. And now we're talking about, painting manhole covers and putting bat boxes up. So I really don't support kind of where this is at currently. And I think we should all think about this in the context of protecting the precious time of the staff. I would rather have them advocating to get some of our current projects that are in the queue done, making sure they're going over to the Department of Environmental Services or whoever is appropriate to get these things over the finish line, or to do more advocacy either to the county board or other pieces to make sure that we have the funding in place to do this. But all of these things I just see as a major distraction.
Okay, maybe I'll turn to Chikwe and Laura to let you respond to that from the staff side before I say anything here.
So again, part of this is part of it on me as a division chief. There's certainly have the staff that works on the projects and works with the TDS staff. But part of me as a division leader is to kind of look and talk with my colleagues across the agencies to see how we can explore these things and to look at the staff resources. Do we have the time and capacity to do it? Because some of it's not going to be completely on us. We're going to be partnering with some of our colleagues in doing some of it. So I absolutely hear what you're saying, and it's important. We got to get staffed up, and that's why we're just taking this one step at a time. We got to get staff on board. We got to get staff up to speed and in place. But part of the challenge that we've been given by the county is through the program review is to look at what other things can we be doing in regards to helping support neighborhoods. And as you heard from the surveys, there are things that neighborhoods are asking for other than strictly just infrastructure things. So I think we can do both, but we just have to be able to manage our time correctly, and we have to be able to work in a way that's smart and leverage our existing resources along with our colleagues. So I do appreciate your statement, and I totally hear what you're saying. Part of the project implementation on the capital side, we do have to work with DES, and they have to do the engineering drawings, which is not directly within our agency, but we still have to work with them to get the project designs and built. Some of these projects we can do much quicker because they're smaller. Some of it will be done in partnership with the neighborhoods, possibly through things like mini grants, where the neighborhoods are actually doing the project work and we're just providing the funding. So there's ways I think we can deliver some of these things without putting in a whole lot of staff time. But it also gives you guys as ArNAC tools to go back and galvanize the neighborhoods, as you mentioned, Bill, getting people excited. Wow, this is a nice, quick project that we did. What else can we do? Well, we've got these larger infrastructure and sidewalk projects. We need volunteers. We need block reps. So part of it is to get people excited, have some quick wins, get people energized, and get them involved while we still do the larger work of the program and some of the more complicated projects that you mentioned do take a little bit more time. So I totally hear what you're saying, and I totally appreciate it, but we're going to, part of our exercise is look to see how we can balance both.
Let's see I see somebody's hand up as well.
Good old Bill here, waxing eloquently. I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago, we stood up, or DES, the county stood up something called Complete Streets. And it came from Speed Hump World, another, I forgot what the name is, Traffic Hump. And part of the discussion about creating this was to have, where are we going to get the staff to, and where are we going to get the citizens to do the, to do what citizens do, like here. And one decision was that 2 people would be nominated from NC ArNAC for a specific amount of time. That time ran out in June, so they're gone. I'm gone. So one of the things that we need to do is to find 2 people who would like to work the Complete Streets world.
Yeah, Bill, this is Kathy. Let me chime in here. I've made that request and for people to let me know if they're interested. I haven't heard any interest expressed from anyone. I'll follow up on that and we'll see what we can do to get somebody identified. It's a good point. We do need to make sure we have reps on that committee.
Let me put one, I was trying to get to one marketing idea. When this thing got started, we put out Complete Streets put out this data call. Got like 600 or 700 different projects to do. And we didn't have enough money to do 6 in 2 years, that's like 600. So what we did was we set a criteria about how we would prioritize this stuff. And it was truly creative. And we are dealing in Complete Streets. I'm off Complete Streets now, as long as you suckers. Okay. And so what I'm saying is ArNAC needs to come up with 2 volunteers that will be on the Complete Streets Committee, and you will be able to learn an immense amount of information. You will be very effective in Complete Streets, but you'll be even more effective when you're sitting here in part of neighborhood conservation to understand how we can better prioritize our work and work, not just work with, and for one, we had 600 requests. We had no idea how to deal with it. So what we did was we went out with the construction,
Bill, this is Kathy. I apologize for interrupting. Thank you again for the plug about participation on Neighborhood Complete Streets. I agree 100% with you. We need that participation, and hopefully your comments will encourage people to volunteer to do that. But we need to take some more questions. We're kind of getting close to time here. I thought I saw Cliff's hand up.
Cliff, yeah, Cliff and then Bernie.
On the funding side, it's pretty clear that a lot of these uses wouldn't be eligible for CIP funds, right?
Correct.
To what extent are these projects eligible for CIP, and where would the money come from we're talking about?
Right. So part of the conversation we're going to have with our colleagues is, again, some of them are CIP eligible, but some of them are going to have to be looked at either through other grants or through general fund. That's probably the biggest driver will be the general fund. And some of these projects that are listed here, some of the smaller ones are not that expensive projects. some of them, we have some money in our current budget we could use, but depending on the popularity of it, we may have to ask for more. But again, the goal is they're smaller, they're more tactical, the neighborhoods can get in and do them. It helps build support for the overall ArNAC programs that can get together, work, and hopefully recruit people out of these smaller projects into the larger group.
Yeah.
So
If we're doing what you say,
right,
it would be a wonderful marketing tool for those 10, 15, 20 civic associations who don't know what we are and are not interested. And we can use these as a means to draw them in.
True. And the other part is when we think about processes, again, you have the ArNAC process, which is the more the point system and kind of moving up. Something short like this could be just every year where small projects are awarded and you get them done. And then if we get more money the following year, then we can put out something with.
I think there's the real opportunity here is neighborhood engagement. In fact, get to your point, part of the issue is that, yes, we're all in the queue and we're all waiting. At varying degrees may have a project that's waiting for design and construction, or we have a project that's way down the points list isn't going to get funded. I mean, let's just face it, it's not going to get funded. So this is a great way to show results from the Arlington Neighborhood Program and say, look at that. There, it may not be a curb gutter and sidewalk project or a street light project, but it's something that really adds to placemaking in the neighborhood. So it also may engage neighborhoods in fundraising. Like if once you see some projects, you take some pictures of projects, then you can go, oh wow, we've got something for a grant here. We can show that Arlington County is doing something really positive. Go after the Bloomberg Foundation or whoever is making the grants and say, let's get some money because the county can't do it all. That's the point here. And I think it's part of your point, Bill, is that you get grassroots support going and you get a lot of energy and you get a lot more results.
That's what I was going to say. Get the citizens to know about this kind of stuff and then jump on it like a crazy.
Yeah. And it's not gonna take place of the CIP.
Right.
We're just never.
So that's my question though too. Yeah. What's preventing alternate funding sources from going to current projects that are currently on the list? Or when's the last time we've tried to do something besides just typical CIP funds to do this? Because if the trajectory continues for the CIP funds to go down, specifically allocated to the neighborhood program, whether that's a lack of staff advocacy, whether that's a lack of executive committee advocacy, if that's going to be the trend, there has to be alternate ways to get some of these things done. Even just the current things on the list.
So the CIP is the biggest part. I mean, a lot of the capital projects you're talking about, I mean, the CIP is the vehicle to do it. And so we're going to have to continue to work to try to get funds to do it. Now, will the county switch general fund for CIP? I doubt it. A lot of these projects are very big and very expensive. Right. And so that's why these smaller projects, again, I don't view them as competing because, again, one source of funding is general fund potentially for these projects. And then we're still going to have to do our work and advocacy for the larger capital projects. So we are going to continue to do both. This will be new, but we're going to continue to try to push to get funding for the capital projects. I mean, that's all we can continue to do. I mean, that's the source of how the county does these infrastructure projects.
What you're saying, as I was looking through this, because I've been here too long.
Right. I didn't say that way.
Repairing sidewalks was on that list. All you have to do is pick up the phone and call the right person, and DES will have that sidewalk repaired. And you have to call them about 4 or 5 times. What it does is that list brings a list of concerns that we have, and it will galvanize DES to be more responsive in repairing sidewalks. And that's just one example of how we as a unit of the whole can be good for all of our.
And I just wanted to make sure we got to Bernie's question.
Yeah, so we got Bernie, and then I know, John, did you want to comment on this, or did you have another question?
I have a comment on this.
Okay, yeah, so John has a comment, and then we'll get to Bernie's question.
Thanks, because I can't see in the room who's asking questions, so.
I wanted to add to what Cliff and Bill said in that one of the topics we propose are neighborhood services. And that's for civic associations who don't necessarily have the resources to support their own websites, newsletter distribution, things like that. That will be, if we do end up going forward with that, if it is possible, that will be an overall benefit to all civic associations, and hopefully, based on Bill and Cliff's remarks, pull people into ArNAC and show the value of ArNAC.
Exactly right. Yep, so Bernie.
If you pull up the slide on the environmental impact of the plants and trees.
Steve's got control.
Okay, that's the one. Now you see where it says there, firstly, native, it says native grass. At the bottom it says appropriate action of native plants and grasses. Native grasses are wind pollinated. They do not support very many pollinators. I mean, they do have some, but generally, you do not want to say plant native grasses. You want to say plants that support pollinators. Like native plants, specifically native plants that support pollinators.
So Bernie, I think that's an important point. So this list is what you all are creating, giving to us. So Kathy, maybe you can talk to Bernie afterwards, or Bernie, you can email Kathy and let her know what it is that you're thinking should be changed, and then she can kind of work that out with you.
But basically, grasses are wind pollinated, so they don't do very much to support.
I think one of the ones that the more specific ones that, so this is kind of an umbrella, right? One of the more specific ones that went into that one was about, changing grass to clover, for instance.
Well, that would be reasonable, but.
So that'll kind of get into sort of the details of what are grasses, or what does that mean? But I think it's really important that you talk with the executive committee before we get this list.
So I'll send a message to
I got you afterwards. We'll talk. I'll get you Kathy's contact information.
Yeah, and I think, Bernie, I think if the term grasses is troublesome, and I understand your reasons why, we could just have the policy be appropriate native plants in all A&P projects,
Well, no, let me be a little more specific than that.
Yeah.
You can just say ground cover.
No, you don't want to say that either. You want to say
Okay.
what pollinator.
All right, so Bernie,
Send me.
I'll work with you to edit it with Kathy, and I'll make the connection.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, but thanks, Bernie. You continue to be a good advocate for pollinators. So thanks. Any other questions or comments from anybody?
We've got Sarah and Carter.
Yeah, I keep hearing us talking about encouraging engagement with ArNAC. For me, the thing is encouraging the engagement of people in neighborhoods in Arlington. And I am super excited about this list because I think, there's all sorts of logistical things to figure out. But I'm Arlington View. We have not been active in forever. There was the thing that started me coming and us coming was, yes, the possibility of the bigger grants. But my motivation is seeing all the change in our neighborhood and wanting to engage people. And there are a lot of things. We've got a creek that people throw a bunch of junk in. And I think if this supported an activity that we could clean up the junk, there are all sorts of things I can see that would help strengthen our community. So I appreciate your comment about the bigger things, but I do really think the payoff for Arlington, whether or not, with all due respect, whether or not they all join ArNAC, and I'm good.
But you would be an example for.
Right, and it would help with some people in my neighborhood who are cranky about the county. So it could help community building, not only within our neighborhoods, but within the county. And I keep hearing us talk about supporting ArNAC, and I'm excited about supporting, big communities.
Well, we're here to support all of you in ArNAC, but in turn, that is supporting
Right.
everyone in the county, so.
Keyword here is neighborhood.
Yes.
It's not necessarily county ArNAC alone. It's, it's the neighborhoods are you know, the foundation.
So Kathy, I'd like to make one quick comment. Up on the screen, you see something about public spaces and it says making restoration and protecting neighborhoods safe locations. So also in our division, the historic preservation program just had they're announcing the recipients of the historic preservation grant fund. And I'm not going to tell you who they are now, wait for the public press release to come out, but there were 12 recipients and I believe 4 were civic associations.
Sweet.
And a couple of them are in this room, so I'll let you get the presentation. or actually online. So
What you just said is very important.
Yeah, sorry,
20
I didn't
associations
interrupt.
don't
We've got one more question online.
stand up or down by action.
Okay, so one, online is Sarah.
Sarah.
See, let's take Ed's question online, and then I'd just like to wrap up kind of with our next steps here.
I just wanted to comment further on the traffic calming. This was going to require some additional work on the part of ArNAC's part. The frustrating thing about the traffic calming in the past has been that it requires traffic engineering through a contractor to go out and do speed counts in order to determine whether or not there's a speeding problem. And so until you do that information gathering, neighborhoods don't know whether or not they have a legitimate scientific based speeding problem. So this is just something for ArNAC to keep in mind when they're going down this road. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Ed.
It's a good comment. Thank you, Ed. I'm sorry. We have one more question in the room.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
Sarah.
Well, this is Sarah McKinley. I just wanted to, Kathy, I wanted to thank you and the other team here to put this together. It was very thoughtful. And, you know, I'm very struck by the concept of having a small budget for each civic association. It could be an annual budget. I think that would be a real driver for the civic associations to say, okay, what are we going to do this year? And, you know, my civic associations had some large projects and you wait years to get those done. When they do get completed, they're wonderful, okay? And our civic association can look to those projects with pride. But I think having a small project that the civic association can look at each year and say, okay, we have, I don't know what the budget would be, $100. Let's say each has $100. What are we going to do with our $100 this year? I think that would be an incredible driver towards civic involvement. So I appreciate the thought. I think that it's a great idea.
If I could maybe respond to that, as a civic association president, I think that's the responsibility of the civic associations to do that. And if your neighborhood isn't doing anything to support you or your residents, you should hold your folks accountable that are running the civic association. We just raise dues as an example for every household in our civic association, so we can put on events that brings the community together, do fundraising for charitable causes, and do small projects and things around the community. So I really don't see that as a Arlington County piece. I don't want to see my tax dollars have to increase to fund micro projects all over the place. And I also just see every one of those things would have to take time away from the neighborhoods program folks to help coordinate that or dole out grants or assess them. And that's, I just think that would be really competing with the large projects that are still, years behind schedule.
But what I hope these small projects will do is allow you to be a larger voice to everybody else and say, look what I've done. Now here's a little bit of money. Why don't you get active? Why don't you get to be like Sarah and get these little things done, get out and be active. And that may be a real benefit for the government to incentivize people that don't live in y'all's two civic associations as examples.
And Steve, this is Kathy. I know I owe you a phone call when I'm back in town next week. I look forward to talking to you about your views and understanding those better, and certainly will follow up. I and the rest of the executive committee will follow up with you on that.
Thank you.
Sure. I just wanted to wrap up here by saying that we're not, we planned that we would take a vote saying, hey, do we have approval to submit this list of 17 new project types to the staff to review? We don't have a quorum to do that, but I'm going to go ahead and ask the staff, please take this list, start working on it, and I will also open it up if you guys have any other ideas, like that you say, hey, there's something I wish had been on that list of 17 project types, I didn't see it. Please email me. I'll try to respond to you. If it's something we feel we need to add, we'll do that. We'll go ahead and do a formal vote in September, but I don't want to wait 2 months to have the staff start looking into these things. So
Hey, Kathy, this is Steve again. Apologies here, and please correct me if there's a process-wise thing I'm missing, but the, I really, speaking for myself only, would really prefer if this did not go over the staff to chew on for the next 2 months, as it could be a big distraction.
Sorry,
if we don't have a proper quorum and we don't actually have the votes to be able to push this forward, I don't think we can give this to them as a task to distract them.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to disagree with that in the sense that they can start looking at it if we vote in September and say no, okay, we'll stop it at that point, but I just hate to lose the time because we don't meet next month and there's time for them to now. Chickway and Laura, are you guys okay with that?
I mean, again, some of these things are on our work program just to kind of look at, because we've been trying to figure out ways to leverage our other colleagues. So we would be talking with them about our programmatic stuff anyway. So it's not gonna be a time drain on us, because we have to interact with them anyway to talk about projects, talk about other future opportunities. They're already coming to us asking, for instance, DES is looking at a permitting process for art in the public right of way. So they want to talk with us about that application process, and that lends itself to some of the things around here. So it's going to be part of our natural interaction with our colleagues anyway. It's not going to be a special set of work.
I say that our normal course of business has to get done in July and August, and that's priority. But then how to work faster and better and more effectively, we have to look at that. And, we may say, none of this, or with input from, we may fix it, or we may say this is a great idea. So I think there's a middle ground here of saying, get your job done, but let's also take a little time to get some thinking into these areas.
That's a good point. I mean, the projects are the priorities. As I've talked to Laura, getting the funding round and getting the projects done, that is our top priority. And we've met with board members, met with the manager, that is the priority. So don't think that we're like, oh, we're going to drop that and work on this. No, the projects are the priority. But where we have time and we have capacity and we're interacting with our colleagues anyway, that's what we would talk about these other items.
And my project is number one.
Okay. Any other final comments from anybody? David or John, anything you want to add?
No, Kathy.
Okay, David?
Kathy, I just want to mention, since it was brought up, that we've been advocating pretty strongly for CIP funds. We meet regularly with our county board representative, and he's been working with us to advocate for more CIP funds. So it is a process that is happening, and we're hopeful that the CIP funds will increase in the out years. So just want to mention that is going on.
And I'll go through that with you when we meet, and be happy to show you kind of what we've been doing in terms of advocacy and increasing the amount of CIP funding and the things that David's mentioning there. Okay. Thank you all very much for, again, another healthy discussion. We appreciate it very much. And thanks for attendance, both remotely and in person. So we'll see you guys in September then.
I second the nomination.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
I missed. Okay.